Do you remember the fight between King Kong and dinosaurs in King Kong film? Or some hungry dinosaur chasing people in Jurassic Park movies? If you remember these action scenes, then you have already witnessed some of the greatest visual effects. But many of you still don't know about the history of this technology. That's why, in this video, the film gossips will describe every major detail about it. So keep watching our channel and support us by subscribing to the film gossips. Before we dive into its history, let us teach you something about it. The visual effects, or more commonly VFX, is a creation or manipulation of objects, creatures or environments, which doesn't exist in real life. It's an integral part of the filmmaking process, through which a filmmaker can create and use almost anything in his film. From Steven Spielberg to Christopher Nolan, every filmmaker used visual effects to make his movies. That's the basic definition of visual effects. Now let's move to some decades back. The 20th century is the period where many things were discovered. One of them was VFX and its many techniques. It was a Frenchman, Georges Mills, who pioneered the first ever technique of visual effects, often called father of visual effects and cinematician. Georges discovered the stop-motion technique by an incident. But later, he mastered this technique and produced many films until 1913. His most famous work is A Trip to the Moon, 1902. This was the first ever film which had live action and animation. George is also credited for developing other techniques like multiple exposure, dissolves, and time-lapse photography in cinema. After the amazing work done by Mills, other filmmakers around the globe also joined this race, especially in the US, where Hollywood was in its early days. From the 1910s, filmmakers were already using techniques like glass mates and miniatures for visual effects. This race became more intense when D.W. Griffith joined it. A genius of that time, he introduced many techniques for the best visuals in the art of storytelling. He developed the visual language of cinema by introducing techniques like shot transitions, iris in and iris out. Those tricks created more dramatic effects and motion pictures became more interesting. Many other big names of classical Hollywood also used these methods. Ben-Hur and Thief of Baghdad are films where these techniques were used heavily. But then a German film was released in 1927, which changed the course of VFX technology. Thus started a new age of cinema, and this art was never the same after that. Metropolis was a German science fiction film which was directed by Fritz Lang. This film was way ahead of its time because of its visual effects. It was the first film in which many new technologies were successfully used. These techniques were rear projection, matte painting, and the most important one, the in-camera technique. After the release of this film, it became a hallmark in the history of visual effects. After the Metropolis, the same approach towards VFX was being used until 1941. Orson Welles, the legendary filmmaker of Hollywood, released his masterpiece, The Citizen Kane. It was a drama film directed by Orson, but once again, the history of cinema was rewritten. Every aspect of this film was well received, but there was something else, which was hard to ignore. This thing was the film's reliance on visual effects to tell a story. Now it was clear for everyone that VFX has been used to narrate a story. After that film, the world entered into wars and there wasn't any significant innovation in VFX. When the whole world came to a stable state, innovations began again. In the 60s, there was the development of crude motion control systems. It was used in Mary Poppins 1964, which was a great achievement.
Alright, come on with me.
Even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious.
After that, Stanley Kubrick shocked the world with his film 2001, A Space Odyssey 1968. In that film, in-front projection method was used instead of the rear projection. The result was fabulous and VFX went to a higher level. With the invention of the computer, all things were changed. The game of visual effects entered a whole new world. Computer graphics not only gives the freedom of choice but also realistic environments. Jurassic Park was a film which exhibited the power of digital technology. Its success gave a message to all filmmakers that everything is possible now.
We've made living biological attractions so astounding that they'll capture the imagination of the entire planet.
So it was a turn of James Cameron, who made Titanic. This film was a true wonder of CGI and digital power. Afterward, another man decided to increase the scale of VFX. It was Peter Jackson, the creator of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. These three films won Oscar awards for their visual effects. After that, Avatar came with its amazing visual effects. It was the first film in which expressions were caught while shooting. This film was the epitome of VFX technology. Now almost every major film is using VFX for many purposes. Avengers Endgame is 90% visual effects technology, and only 10% real scenery is included. It shows that VFX technology has come a long way in more than 100 years. If you are here from the start of this video, now you know the history of visual effects. If this video taught you and entertained you, then subscribe to the Film Gossips and hit the bell icon to stay updated.